Hi, this is Derek Sai from LearnByBlogging.com. Today I want to give a review of this book called Think Like a Freak by Stephen Levitt and Stephen Dubner. They're both famous authors. I really enjoyed the previous two books that by the Freak Economist, these two Freak Economists. You can check some of the previous review. I have it there. In this book, the author actually talked about several subjects. There are several subjects that they went through, and mostly they are more toward being helpful on how to change your behavior. To me, is kind of more productive than just finding something interesting and funny. So here's a quick summary of the book. Number one is that the hardest words in English is actually the three words, I don't know. We don't do enough experimentation because the tradition and lack of expertise. So perhaps we can learn from children who are more likely to say, I don't know. And because if you don't say enough about your lack of knowledge, you may not have enough curiosity. So the second topic is the phrase is, what is your problem? So you need to define and redefine the problem that you are trying to solve. And here's a young, he gave an example of how a young Japanese man figured out how to be a hot dog eating champions by studying how best sequence to swallow the hot dogs, not how much he can eat, but what is the right sequence to eat them. He basically dipped the bun in the water and swallow it and eat the hot dog separately, and so the salt doesn't get to you. And there's a lot of tricks that this person get to find out, and he actually beat the record by 2 times, 50 versus 25 and 1/8. So you can see how there's a video here. If you click on the link, is how he broke his own record at 69 a couple years later. So instead of asking, how do I eat more hot dogs, the right question is, how do I make the hot dogs easier to eat? And he sees it as a sport, so he can experiment with the ways to improve the ease of eating. Like I said, putting the buns first. And he did not take the record as the ultimate limit. He did not believe in that record. And that goes to tell you how best to solve a problem. Number 3 is like a big dive job, the truth in the roots. Basically, he's saying that the finding the root cause is really the hard work, and people tend to shy away. Like why the legalized abortion actually reduces the crime rate, and why the Protestants make 1% more money than Catholics, because they are better work ethics established that really centuries ago, and why American blacks are 50% more likely than American whites to have hypertension. And they attribute to the gene selection during the slave trade to avoid dying during the long journey to America. And they actually, the slave trader actually lick the sweat of the slaves, and to find out if they're sweating more salt, and because of that, it actually create a certain kind of people that have a higher probability of getting a hypertension. And also Robin Warren, he also found the H. pylori bacteria contributed to ulcer, and he actually approved it by injecting the bacteria into himself, and that's how much he wanted to find the root cause of the ulcer. And sometimes you have to sacrifice to find the truth. And number 4 in the book is think like a child. To solve problem as a child, you need to think small. For example, instead of solving big problem, you want to solve small problems. For example, giving free glasses to a poor Chinese village actually raised their learning by 25 to 50%. And and don't be afraid of the obvious, like in the case of Barry Marshall's discovery of the H. pylori bacteria that's causing the ulcer. So finally, have fun, like our trying lottery concept in the savings account to entice more savings. And so you need to think like a child so you can be more creative. And chapter 6 or number 5, you talk about giving a candy. This is called a reward system, giving candy to baby. People respond to our incentive, and sometimes overly so. And giving the baby candy for going to the toilet or potty train could invite a different set of behavior. And they end up, he's describing his daughter end up going to the bathroom every 10 minutes because she wants to have a candy. So we tend to follow the herd, join the neighbor in doing something than doing for the goodness, like the environmental issues, like saving the water or something. If you say that your neighbor do it and it's actually a better reason than say it's actually saving the environment. So, and giving people to choose a choice to stop charity solicitation actually works like magic. In the case of the Smile train example, and because things can be explained by the 3 factors: novelty, candor, and control. Because they are given something new for people to choose, and you have a very candor and say, hey, if you donate this one time, you don't have to donate again. Candor and control. You're giving the people the control, so you don't keep getting those charity solicitation mails. And so changing the framework of the relationship can really work like magic. And just like China's ping pong policy, diplomacy, that's how China was reconnected with America back in the 1940s. So actually in the 1950s. So why incentive fails? Because number 1, you're getting outsmarted by people, gaming the system. Number 2, that people may not respond as you might expect. And number 3 is the rule changes, behavior changes too. So once you change the rule, the behavior also change. Some undesirable effect. And to design the right set of incentive, number 1, to figure out what people really care about, not what they say they care about. So there's a distinction there. Number 2 is incentivize with something valuable to them, but cheap to you, for you to offer. Number 3 is to heed people's response. If unexpected, try something different. And number 4 is to switch the frame from the adversarial to collaborative as if possible. And number 5, people may not always do the right thing as you perceive. And number 6, know what the people will always game the system at some point. Okay. The next chapter is talk about King Solomon and what David Lee Roth have in common. And David Lee Roth, they have a lot of things in common. And the main thing is they use a lot of the game theories. So a game theory like a self-weeding garden. That's the analogy that he gives. And so King Solomon actually got the baby to the right mother in the dispute by claiming to chop the baby in half, and finally the rightful mother actually gave it away, and that's how he found the rightful mother. And same thing with David Lee Roth. He actually put the less than obvious clause in his contract, in the concert rider, and to say he doesn't want any brown M&M in his dressing room. And this is to ensure that the local promoter actually follow through the guidelines to the letter. And more example like the Zappos paying trainees $2,000 to quit before starting, and the ancient ordeal where people are in the lawsuit actually could be subjected to a torture by God if a person lied. And that's actually done a lot of manipulation by the priest. And the last example is about the Nigerian email scam that gets you to pay the scammer a large sum of money upfront to claim the reward money. But why do people actually keep using the Nigerian story? Because it really screens out the gullible victims, and the same tactic can be used to catch the terrorist list as well. So interesting twist on the classic example. Next chapter is how to persuade people who don't want to be persuaded. Tip is that don't pretend your argument is perfect. Number 2, acknowledge the strength of your opponent's arguments. Number 3 is keep the insults to yourself. Do not insult the people you're trying to argue with. Number 4 is why you should always tell stories, not anecdotes. Tell the good stories. And so that's a way of debating. And number 8 is the upside of quitting. And you talk about why people don't quit. And Churchill, because people get trained to this never quit speech by Winston Churchill. We are being brainwashed. And number 2 is that the notion of sunk cost. For example, the Concorde jet by France and British. We just say, well, we already built it, might as well just keep using it, keep running it, and that's actually a sunk cost example. Number 3 is focus on the concrete cost, but not opportunity cost. There's a lot of opportunity costs that people don't pay attention to. Something that you forgo because you make one choice, and you celebrate the failures instead of demonize failure, which might cause people to avoid trying anything at all. So practice this pre-mortem. Find out what might go wrong before it's too late, with anonymity to encourage participation. So this before you start any project, give people a chance to think of the worst case scenario and without the with anonymity, so that they don't. They can speak freely. So 2 authors really give their own story how they quit their dream jobs. One want to be a golf pro, the other wants to be a band player, and instead they start writing books. And one person got his PhD on economics, and became these famous authors. There's 3 books in the running. So that's it. That's all I have. I got a lot from the book. It's interesting read, and it's quite funny. So this is the book, Think Like a Freak, and I highly recommend it. That's all I have today, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.